Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. My name is Muhammad Nuruddin Lemu, and inshallah in this episode we will continue where we stopped on the subject or the general theme of self-improvement, purification of the soul, and how to be a better human being. And may Allah continue to guide all of us, including, in fact, especially myself. In the last episode, we started on a story which I hope we will complete this time. It started with the story of a baker who was at home, everything fine. He had a fallout with his neighbor who was always a very obnoxious neighbor. They started fighting, threatened each other. Unfortunately, the next morning the baker came out and found the dead body of his neighbor outside. He freaked out, escaped and left the town, really very scared for his life. What were people going to say or do? Family didn't know where he had left or gone to. And he went and spent some years, nearly 2 decades, working with a very wise man, Suleiman. And at the end of his time with Suleiman, he decided he was going to get back on the road home, get back to his journey back home. And just before he left, Suleiman gave him 3 pieces of advice in exchange for 3 very valuable gold coins. The first piece of advice was stick to the road home. Don't get distracted. Just stick to the road home. Stay committed to the right path. The second piece of advice was learn to mind your own business and don't be quick in judging. Diagnose before prescribing. Understand before you start to answer. And the third piece of advice for the third gold coin was save your anger for the next day. However angry you are about something today, don't act on it. Handle it tomorrow. Save your anger for the next day. The baker left Suleiman's place. On the journey, he met some fellow travelers. They became friends. Evening came. They wanted to spend the night, so they decided they were going to go and spend the night at a nearby hotel. But it was off Suleiman's main road. And the baker. And the baker then said to them, you know what, yeah, I spent a lot of money on this, and you know what, let me just get. And they tried to come, but the place is not far away. This is not taking you off the road home. This is just sideways. He said, it doesn't matter. Since I've paid so much, a whole gold coin, let me just take the advice and keep on my journey back. Few minutes later, after they have left, the baker gets to hear gunshots and realizes armed robbery. These people have been killed, and he is so grateful. He's stuck to the road home. He now actually appreciates that gold coin he paid for that advice was worth it. And he prayed for wise Suleiman, who gave him that piece of advice. He carried on the journey, and it got very dark. Thunder, clouds were coming, and he decided, he saw a house with some light. He went to see if he could be allowed to spend the night even on their veranda. And he met this huge man in the house, giant of a guy, very scary looking. And the man said, yeah, what do you want? How can I help you? He said, I just want to spend the night, maybe out on the veranda, if you don't mind, just away from the rain. The man, no problem. Actually, come in. Let me give you some food. And no problem. He went in, and as he served the food, he knocked on one trapdoor-like thing that had a lock, unlocked it, opened. This beautiful woman came out. He said, stop. He gave her her food. I go back in, and he closed. And the baker was really angry. He wanted to say something. He wanted to accuse. He started plotting, like, will I report this? What should I do? Let me correct this immediately. But he remembered he paid a whole gold coin for a piece of advice, which was, learn to mind your own business. Don't be quick to judge. Diagnose before prescribing. And so he restrained himself And the big man asked him, so what do you think about that? He said, you know what? Yeah, I'm not judging. You know your relationship better, what she did to you, etc., etc. And that's when this big man brought out one big axe that he was hiding under the table and put it aside. And he said, you are lucky you would have been number 41. That I've killed 40 people who just couldn't keep shut. They were quick to judge me. He said, that woman, I was supposed to get married to her. She and one other boyfriend of hers went and connived. She poisoned my food. And that day, I just wasn't hungry, so I gave the food to the dog, and the dog died immediately. I would have been dead. So I pretended I was dead. That's when I heard the sound of them coming back to the house. I pretended I was dead, and that's when I got to hear what their whole plot was. They were even happy and dancing that I was dead, and all this home and everything would be their own property. So I got up, carried my axe, I killed the guy. She begged for mercy. I just felt, no mercy. You are so wicked. But I didn't have the heart to kill her. The guy, I buried him outside. I would have buried you outside too with him. For her, I felt, okay, I'll put her in imprisonment. And I have that cellar. That's where she spends the day. And I'm still deciding what to do. She's been there now for up to around nearly 2 months. The baker kept quiet, and he was just praying for Suleiman, who had given him the advice of don't be quick to judge. Diagnose before you prescribe. Listen before you start answering. And learn to mind your own business. Don't be quick. The baker finished his food. The big man gave him a place to lie down. He couldn't sleep, of course, but he felt a bit safer. The next morning, he got up, they said bye, and he carried on his journey home. It was a long journey, but towards the end of the evening, when it was getting a bit late after Maghrib, after Isha, that's when he started to recognize the town. The town had grown big. But he knew the road and he knew past the mosque where to go until he finally came to his house. But before he went and knocked the door, he heard as if there was some party going on inside. He looked out of the window to see who he could recognize. He saw his family members with some strange people in there. And his wife was even, hugging and kissing one other man. And he was angry. How could she betray him? He who didn't go and remarry. He put his hand inside his bum, removed the knife. He was going to go and just kill them and kill himself. What kind of life is this? And just as he removed his knife, and was thinking of going knock on the door, open and go in, he remembered the last piece of advice he paid a very expensive gold coin for. Save your anger for the next day. Save your anger for the next day. And he said, no way, not for this one. Gaskiya, I've had enough, by God, I just have to, how can I live with this? But when he thought about how he benefited from the previous wisdom of keep to the road home, he benefited from the second piece of wisdom of mind your own business, don't judge too quickly. He said, okay, I'll just come back tomorrow and kill them all. He put his knife back. The big cake that he was carrying that Suleiman had given him, he just left it by the side of the window, went back to rest. He couldn't sleep that night. Very angry. The next morning, he just waited. When it was light enough and he knew people would be awake, he decided, you know what, let me just go and kill them now. Got walking on his way back home. As he was getting close to his house, One other neighbor saw him. Said, wait, oh, are you not the baker who used to live in this house? Said, yes, so what? Oh, sorry, oh, just to let you know, we were looking for you. We went round towns. We didn't find you. We finally caught the gangsters who killed that your neighbor. Some other people he had gotten in problem. That guy was obnoxious and had a lot of problems. He said, wow. Anyway, that doesn't concern me now. And they said, oh, before you, whatever, congratulations, your son came back from school. He has gone to university. He's a big man now. And your daughter's grown up. She's married. Your mother, she couldn't stop hugging, your son yesterday. We were at the house, a little party welcoming everybody else. And that's when this man said to himself, why? Actually, that's how I was going to kill everybody. He just looked at the man. He said, thank you. As he walked home, he said to himself, thank God he agreed to pay that gold coin for that precious piece of advice. Save your anger for the next day. That's what saved him. That's what saved his family. He prayed for Suleiman the wise. He got home, went straight to knock on the door. He knocked, knocked, knocked. And somebody opened the door. The young man said, yes, how can I help you? And the baker said, he laughed. He could recognize his son. He said, is your mother around? Said, yes. The mother said, who's at the door? She came, saw, she told everybody. She was screaming out of joy. Come in, where have you gone? We were looking for you. All he could keep saying is, I am sorry, I am sorry. I am so sorry. Now you're back, alhamdulillah. Introduce the daughter, introduce this, introduce that, etc., etc. Everybody was happy, but they hadn't prepared any breakfast, so they were thinking, okay, what can we eat? Check the fridge, check what can we bring. And the man said, oh, I've just remembered, actually, there's something I left outside. You left outside? Yeah, don't worry, I'll be back. So he went outside where he left that big cake the previous day, previous night. He got it, brought it back. He said, here, I brought you a cake from a person who, inshallah, one day we will all go and meet. This man is really responsible for me being still alive. But you know what? Yeah, let me give you the honor. Cut the cake and let's have it for breakfast. Everybody fine? Yes. They brought tea and drinks to the table. And as the wife cut this big cake, thick, rich cake, cut the cake into two, cut the cake again, 3 gold coins rolled onto the floor. The baker looked and he just smiled. Suleiman didn't go away with that money. Suleiman actually put the gold coins back into the cake that he gave him. And the family was like, where's this from? And the baker said, it was my pay that has come back. The wife said, but this, is it real gold? Said, yes, but that should be enough to last us for our whole life and more, our whole lives. She said, yes. The baker said, let's just say Alhamdulillah and pray. We'll go for a break now, and inshallah when we come back, I'd like us to dissect a few lessons from that story, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. We've been looking at these issues of diseases of the heart, and we call them by various names. Human weaknesses, character weaknesses, those things that become impediments to our growth as human beings, as Muslims, as husbands, as wives, as parents, as children, as neighbors, as professionals, in every capacity. If you have a board of directors where showcasing brilliance is an important trait of somebody, it'll undermine the quality of conversations, of creativity, of ideas. If you have a family where one person, whether the father, whether the mother, is always defensive, doesn't accept corrections, it has ripple effects on other members of the family. It is a climate changer. You change the kind of climate, the atmosphere in which children grow. You change the kind of climate in which people work just because you want to showcase brilliance. You want to be the one who has the spotlight on you. You're the one who wants to be seen, recognized. You're not wanting to share credit. You want to be like the mountain. High up, everybody sees you. But please remember, just like with mountains, even stones don't like to stay on the mountains. Even stones try to roll away from the top of the mountain. So it's really important that as we deal with each other, let us be cognizant of those weaknesses in ourselves that provoke further weaknesses in others. That sometimes the thing you complain about your wife, the thing you complain about when it comes to your wife, is actually a byproduct of what you are like to her, or what you are like to your children, and how your children relate to you, of what you are like to your driver, your house help, your colleague at work, your subordinate, but also how you react to your seniors. If you're the kind of person who is just seeking acceptance, you wait to hear anything they have to say and you want to agree. You have nothing new to say. The moment you sense they are saying something in this direction, you are fully on board with them. You're not critical. Don't look at your loyalty as something that will be rewarded always. When they want independent-minded people, they will not take you. So when it comes to ourselves, let's ask ourselves and take responsibility regarding who provokes what in us, and our allowing others to provoke arrogance, to provoke defensiveness, to provoke being comparative, that somebody will come dressed in a particular way, speaks in a particular way just to make you feel down. And because you are ready to be like the dog and the bone, be comparative. If you recall the story of the dog that was given the bone and it went to eat its bone and really enjoy itself, as it was crossing a stream, it saw in the water another dog with a bone that looked bigger, and it jumped in to get that bone, but it lost its own. And sometimes, by just getting so carried away with what others have, you lose yourself. It is important that you ask yourself, how can you resist? So one thing, have time to think about your weaknesses. What are your weaknesses? Look at them one by one. Now I'd ask myself, do I have a problem of thinking I'm right when I could be wrong? Maybe. Let's start with the assumption that maybe that's my big problem. How would I know if it's my problem? Maybe consult with others. What do they think? Actually, if you ask others, what do you think is my biggest weaknesses? Or what are my biggest weaknesses? People start getting a bit diplomatic around you. But it's a bit easier when you ask, what one area do you think I could improve on? Then they feel they are contributing to something good. Then they will give you the same weakness, but in a more positive area for growth, area of improvement. But you need the shock absorbers for whatever you're going to hear, and not get defensive again, especially if defensiveness is one of the problems you suspect you may have. Or showcasing brilliance, the problem of the eagle, where you cut other people's sentences. You really hardly ever acknowledge others may be right, you may be wrong. You don't accept that you are wrong enough to apologize. So, as we prepare for our next encounters with people, let us really be critical. Is it possible that I am seeking acceptance from anyone? Is there anybody I look up to? Somebody I maybe regard as a mentor? Somebody who I consider as, wow, if this person could just even give me some attention, I'll feel on top of the world. Are you really like a chameleon? Is this a form of shirk, where if this person likes something or dislikes something, why do you wear that type of dress? You'll start changing your dress. Why don't you do this? You'll start doing that. We have people who, the moment they change their hairstyles, we find our children and some of our colleagues beginning to change their hairstyles. They change fashion. They never, you don't even know these people, but they have so much influence on us. Are we influenced by infomercials disproportionately to an extent where we have such an inferiority complex when we hear everybody is buying this, limited copies left, limited units left, or if everybody is doing it, I don't want to feel left behind, let me do. Do you really need it before you buy it? Oh, people have stopped buying this kind of cloth. It's this kind of cloth that is on fashion. Is that really what's more comfortable? Is it in line with taqwa and God consciousness? Is it in line with what your conscience is comfortable with? So let's really think carefully about the various things that influence us negatively, but let's also think of how we influence others negatively. When you see misbehavior around you, remember the mirror and the window. That everybody moves around with an imaginary window and an imaginary mirror. What bad leaders do is when they see something wrong, they look out of the window to apportion blame, to look for whose fault it is. When things go right, they look into the mirror and they see themselves and they take credit. How many times do we take credit for good we see in our children? And when you see the child misbehaving, it must be his mother. It must be this. It's always somebody else that's a negative influence. That would be the mosquito in us, the cool fool, the one who doesn't see how you don't know you are actually being a negative influence. Or it may be the expression of the eagle in you, always feeling you are better, and if there's any bad result, it's nothing to do with you. Or it's the crocodile in you, always being defensive, never accepting maybe you have some areas of improvement in your relationship with your children that you should consider. When we look at our relationships, as we said, a bad leader would look out of the window when things go wrong, look into the mirror when things go right. A good leader would look into the mirror when things go wrong and ask themselves, how am I responsible? How do I have the greater responsibility? What did I do wrong? What did I not do better? What did I not do at all? So as much as we want to change the world around us, let us appreciate how our character influences people around. And these diseases of the heart, of the cool fool, the mosquito, of being oblivious, heedless to areas of improvement, to feedback, of being like the eagle of I am better than others, being like the dog, always being comparative. What do others have? What do others think? Or being like the crocodile, I'm not wrong, I've got nothing to apologize for, and always coming up with excuses for you to just stay the way you are. Or being like the chameleon, saying yes to everything and requiring everybody else to just, basically ask you how high to jump, and you'll just ask, where, what height. You just, want to blend in. You cherish your friends so much that you lose ethics and you lose your own individuality and the value you could bring to that group. In conclusion, we've tried to focus in this episode on your role in reflecting on how your weaknesses are contagious and how they are influencing others, and how your arrogance sometimes creates a chameleon in others, seeking acceptance. Sometimes your defensiveness provokes another defensiveness. Sometimes your seeking acceptance is a byproduct of somebody around you. Think carefully at your closest, most relevant relationships. Who influences you the most and who are you the greatest influencer of? And how could you improve relationships by thinking carefully and realizing what's going on wrong? What's going wrong? Because sometimes just recognizing what is wrong is an important solution. Just recognizing what the problem is half of the solution. Not knowing what the problem is, you become like the mosquito. You have a problem and you don't know you have a problem. And when people are trying to kill you, you think they're trying to clap for you. And your head is even moving around, swelling as if, you've achieved something. Inshallah, in the next episode, we will look at some of these strengths. How we can manage the diseases with strengths like humility, curiosity, sincerity, commitment, but also compassion. How we can tackle these impediments to our growth, these potential gateways to greater wisdom, greater knowledge. These are the foundations of growth, to recognize your weaknesses and have a lifetime commitment in dealing with them, improving upon them step by step. Until next time, may Allah continue to help us grow in whatever pleases Him most. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.